Tonight, House Democrats launching their case against President Trump, arguing he abused his power by pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden.
He directed the actions of his team. He personally asked a foreign government to investigate his opponent. These facts are not in dispute.
And that the president obstructed Congress by refusing to turn over evidence to House Democrats.
Such a wholesale obstruction of congressional impeachment has never before occurred in our democracy.
Overnight, tempers starting to flare. This bitter back and forth between Democratic prosecutor Jerry Nadler and White House counsel Pat Cipollone. Nadler rebuking Republican senators.
I see a lot of senators voting for a cover-up, voting to deny witnesses, an absolutely indefensible vote, obviously a treacherous vote.
He accused you of a cover-up. He's been making false allegations against the president. The only one who should be embarrassed, Mr. Nadler, is you.
The Chief Justice silencing the room.
I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's counsel in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body.
President Trump, before departing an economic conference overseas, defending Cipollone.
Gerald Nadler, I've known him a long time. He's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Pat Cipollone is a high-quality human being. I've never seen that emotion, and that's real emotion. That's because he knows this is a hoax. And I was very proud of the job he did.
And on the Democrats' demand for new witnesses, like former National Security Advisor John Bolton, President Trump raising executive privilege, the presidential right to confidential communications with advisors.
I would rather interview Bolton. I would rather interview a lot of people. The problem with John is that it's a national security problem. He knows some of my thoughts. He knows what I think about leaders. What happens if he reveals what I think about a certain leader, and it's not very positive.
Democrats insisting they must be heard.
You will hear their testimony at the same time as the American people. That is, if you allow it, if we have a fair trial.
They're on a crusade to destroy this man, and they don't care what they destroy in the process of trying to destroy Donald Trump.
The president's allies and his attorneys argue the charges are not impeachable offenses. Today, President Trump appeared to waver on that with NBC's Kristen Welker.
For future presidents, is abuse of power an impeachable offense?
Well, it depends, but if you take a look at this, and from what everybody tells me, all I do is I'm honest.
Late today, Ukraine's president on the other end of that call in question with President Trump, giving his assessment to NBC's Keir Simmons.
Do you think President Trump should be impeached, Mr. President?
I'm not the president of the United States, so what can I think about it? It's your president.
But it was President Trump suggesting he'd like to face off with the Democrats in person.
I'd love to go. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be beautiful? I don't know. I'd sort of love to sit right in the front row and stare at their corrupt faces.
Democrats tonight focusing on those 100 jurors before them.
If this conduct is not impeachable, then nothing is.
Still tonight, House Democrats face an uphill battle trying to convince the Republican Senate that President Trump should be removed from office. I was just in the chamber. It's only the first day of opening arguments, and already many Republican senators appear restless, several standing, others regularly leaving the room.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.